and representative of the North Carolina chapter of the American Planning Association, and I appreciate the opportunity to celebrate your accomplishments with you this evening. I was talking with a few folks prior to the meeting, and just noting for them that 8 years ago, I stood up here at a similar gathering and had the honor of presenting Mayor Vaughn with an award recognizing Broad Street as one of the inaugural great main streets in North Carolina. There were 75 communities who had submitted their main street downtown, and Edenton was one of those initial 5 selected. It's wonderful to see that almost a decade later, Edenton is still achieving great things. In fact, I've worked with your town manager and planning staff over the years to host 2 regional planning workshops in Edenton so that other communities can learn from your successes. And the project we're talking about tonight was one of the ones that we highlighted in 2017 at one of those workshops. The North Carolina chapter of the American Planning Association established its statewide awards program in 1975. The awards program includes the Great Places Awards as well as the Marvin Collins Planning Awards. These awards recognize the people, places, and projects that represent the highest standards of achievement in our North Carolina planning community. These awards this year are being presented locally and online in lieu of a presentation at APA North Carolina's annual conference, which had to be canceled this year. The plan implementation category is near and dear to my heart because, as our friends with Holland Consulting Planners can attest, there are many marvelous plans that contain really innovative, beneficial ideas that sit on the shelves gathering dust because communities lack the leadership, commitment, organization, partnerships, and resources necessary to achieve the goals outlined in those plans. And it's a testament to your community that Edenton has been able to successfully move forward with many of the recommendations found in the North Oakham Street redevelopment plan. And there were numerous submissions in each of the award categories this year that were reviewed by the APA North Carolina Awards Committee. And the North Oakham Street redevelopment plan was the only award recipient in the implementation category that was selected for an award this year. So why was this plan deemed important enough? First, Edenton Town Council recognized a need to improve the quality of its neighborhoods by focusing on strategies related to housing. In 2014, the council started the process of developing 2 neighborhood redevelopment plans that have been discussed this evening, involving a planning consultant and involving extensive public input during that process. Those plans were adopted in 2015, and the work to implement them began almost immediately. The North Oakham Street redevelopment plan was chosen by APA North Carolina because it leveraged an innovative concept offered by the North Carolina General Statutes to establish a redevelopment commission to acquire vacant or dilapidated properties that were very difficult to work with on the private real estate market. The resulting strategies included public-private partnerships that created momentum in those redevelopment areas, including choosing one of the neighborhood redevelopment zones for the site of a new police station, as well as the mentioned again the Edenton Boys and Girls Club, acquiring the former elementary school site from Chowan County. After years of work that remained largely behind the scenes, the product of the town's efforts are resonating in these neighborhoods, ensuring that North Oakham Street and the surrounding neighborhoods remain a vibrant and important part of this community. Now, they say it takes a village, and so we're gathered here this evening to recognize the collaborative efforts of your elected leaders. Mayor Stallings, our current and former council members who all had a hand in the development and implementation of these plans. Your planning board members, your consultants with Holland Consulting Planners, your town manager, planners, staff who made this happen, property owners, business people, nonprofit organizations, and many others in Edenton who've contributed their ideas, time, efforts, and resources to the success of the North Oakland Street Redevelopment Initiative. And so, on behalf of the North Carolina chapter of the American Planning Association, it's my pleasure to recognize the town of Edenton as the winner of the Marvin Collins Outstanding Planning Award for implementation of the North Oakland Street Redevelopment Plan, and present Mayor Stallings with this certificate. It is my understanding you'll be receiving a framed certificate, a little more suitable for hanging. Will come to you from Raleigh sometime in short order. The Mayor and Council, I brought some copies for each of you, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hurd, for that presentation. We certainly appreciate your taking your time to come to Edenton to present that. And again, Mr. Holland, we certainly appreciate what you have done, and our previous mayor and other council people that have parts in this. We certainly appreciate. And Elizabeth, your help, you've done a lot, and all of that area looks very good. And she talked about the area down on Oakland Street that Dawson Tyler has done. It's phenomenal. It's very, very good. Okay. All right, the next thing on our item is we have some people here from the Edenton Educational Foundation. If you gentlemen would like to leave, please feel free to do so, or you could stay. It's entirely.
We make room for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Before y'all leave, can I say one quick thing? I think this is just such a great ending result to a community that looks at its assets, not somebody else's assets. And Edenton, our historic assets are really important, and especially in this African American neighborhood. And I think if you look at, we did the same thing with the cotton mill. It had a $4 million value when Unified turned it over. I think it's got a $40 to $60 million value now. And if you look at what it's been transformative, and it's been done sort of one step at a time. And I think we really need to, we thank everybody. Elizabeth has put in just so much time. But Anne Marie put in, she was at those meetings, and she shouldn't ever like anybody to say anything about her, what she's doing, but her persistence and her ability to make sure all this gets done just, I think, needs to be called out in a really good way. So here's to everybody. And we got lots of places where we can look at our own assets again and make things better.
Thanks for Dawson Tyler. Yeah,
He's phenomenal. What he was doing on there is awesome.
Sam, those three houses, most of it, I think Sears
I think they're not, I don't think they're Sears, I think they're another company. I think they're the same company.
Okay, we would like to welcome with us tonight Nelson Spear, Dr. Michael Sasser, and Joy Harville, who are with the Edenton Educational Foundation. And
Can you give me 1 second, Mayor?
Sure,
I just
absolutely.
wanna-
they've got a PowerPoint, and they're going
We're talking about the high school.
yeah.
So good evening, everybody. While we're kind of disinfecting and getting started, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you. What a fitting occasion coming on the heels of the acknowledgement of this board, the work that you've done to rehabilitate the vibrance of our community. And so I think it's only fitting that we're now talking about John A. Holmes High School and how we will rehabilitate and provide a generational project to benefit our students and our staff and our community for years to come. So we really appreciate this time and look forward to sharing with you the good things that the Board of Education are thinking about as we design a building that lasts us for years to come. I do want to acknowledge we have Nelson Spear from Destination Downtown. I appreciate him being with us tonight and his support, as well as Joy Harville from the Edenton Education Foundation, and greatly appreciate your support and your time this evening. So thank you for being here, and certainly to the town of Edenton, you've been very gracious in your support and your care of the school system. We're very thankful for that. As we talk about the project, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you in this moment of COVID-19. I appreciate the community's efforts to open our buildings, to show gratitude to our staff and our teachers for what they're doing for our children. So thank you so much for your grace and generosity in this moment as well. The Board of Education has partnered with two important people for this project, so I want to mention those to you. They're not here with us today, but our architect that we've recently hired that will design the project and work with us is LS3P. Certainly, they are well experienced in this line of work and put together a project that will certainly celebrate the history of our downtown and capture the architectural features that define Edenton. So we're excited to partner with them. And then our construction management group is NBCon, also well experienced in the work of building schools. So we're partnering with two exceptional companies that are going to help lead us in what will be a wonderful design for a new John A. Holmes High School. It's really important as we begin this work to recognize the opportunities to incorporate our history. We recognize the significance that John A. Holmes has played in so many of our community members' lives. There's ultimately the architectural design of the building, the structure itself that means so much to so many. So our architect, our construction group will work to preserve those features as we look through redesigning the facility. But then there's just the memories of being an ACE, of walking through the halls, sitting in classrooms, the relationship with teachers, the sports, the competitions, the championships we've won. So we know the current site, the current structure has so many sentimental feelings, and so the group will work as we design these features to preserve the history of John A. Holmes. Next, I want to talk to you about the instructional opportunities that we get to, I'm not sure, just move forward, would be great. The instructional opportunities that we'll get to offer our students in a redesign. This building has the opportunity to span generations. In fact, the lifespan is estimated to be 70 years. So when we look about that opportunity, we'll be on the brink, the cutting edge of the 22nd century. So how do we design spaces that will equip our students with the skills necessary potentially to enter a new century? That's a remarkable opportunity that we currently have in front of us that we're embarking upon. We know in businesses and industries, they are asking for greater collaboration, global connectivity, ways that our children can creatively solve problems and be the leaders for the next products that are going to benefit our community across industries. And we want to create spaces that harness that opportunity for teachers as well as students. Hands-on education, as I mentioned, we want to design the solutions. And we want our children to be instrumental in those opportunities and create spaces that afford them those opportunities to excel. We want to emphasize certain content areas that we know are paramount to our community here in Chowan. Our CTE program, Career and Technical Education, could benefit from agricultural science, as well as our health sciences that will allow students to then go back into our community and serve and produce and lead us into the future. We know this project design needs to be community friendly. We want to support the needs, the wants of our communities as we think about this campus to not just serve our students, but serve those in our community. And so thinking through a walking path. Currently, our community utilizes our track facility, and that's a wonderful opportunity. So thinking through other opportunities to allow members to engage in physical exercise and healthy habits. So looking at a walking path, and then event spaces that bring us all together. I think that's so important. We've talked about a gym that will hold 1,000 people. We have a rich tradition of success in our athletic programs. We want to be able to host regional competitions, and we also want to put as many fans in the stands as possible to enjoy our aces and watch their success. We're looking to build an auditorium that will hold 399 people with an orchestra pit, and it was very important to the Board of Education to celebrate the arts, to recognize that we want to grow our own performing theater program within John A. Holmes, but also attract productions to Chowan County and the town of Edenton so we as citizens can enjoy plays and productions. And so we're looking at designing this space to have state-of-the-art sound facilities to really, and lighting that really brings a show to life that comes into this area. And a cafe will be a multi-use space. When we think about conferences and events, we want to be able to adapt and have flexibility to meet the needs of the community. To help this design process, this isn't happening behind four walls and closed doors. We're bringing that to the community. We do have a citizens advisory group that's been formed that really will shape the conversation about what the design of the high school and the program offerings will be. They are identifying input from various key people, whether it's athletics, booster clubs, other special areas to drive that work. We want to talk about the historical significance and hear from the community the importance of the memories and the emotions that are attached to John A. Holmes High School. We need to hear what design works best for the community, as well as ultimately using this committee to provide recommendations to the Board of Education so it is our project. It's our John A. Holmes at the end of the day, and that's really important to us. Next, I want to shift into what are our funding structures for this project. So this is an opportunity to kind of transition from the design and what we're thinking that the building is going to be able to offer to how are we actually going to put a shovel in the ground. Very thankful to the county commissioners as well as the Board of Education for jointly agreeing on a grant opportunity. We are a Tier 1 county. This grant opportunity funds or potentially, should we be accepted, provide us free $15 million with a $5 million local match. So that's a total of $20 million that can go towards funding phase 1 of a new John A. Holmes High School. This is going to be a 2-phase project. It's important for it to be a 2-phase project because we still need to have teaching and learning taking place while construction's underway. So teaching and learning will continue at John A. Holmes High School while a new instructional facility is being built. And this grant opportunity would drastically reduce the tax burden on our community by providing us that opportunity to build phase 1. Phase 2 of the project and how we fund phase 2 of the project has multiple opportunities here as well. We could consider looking at a bond referendum. There's the potential of a USDA loan. And then certainly right now on our ballot, we have a 1/4 cent tax or sales tax that potentially is proposed to raise approximately $300,000 per year to help with the tax burden. So as we venture into phase two, we've already built phase one with that tax grant. We could potentially use the revenues from a sales tax to support the remaining project in completion, which we hope, phase one, we're looking at a August 2023 move-in date, and then phase two, a year to a year and a half after that. So very exciting, very tangible that we can do this, and I appreciate your support in that. Phase one, just wanted to kind of give you a brief overview of what that looks like. So there you can see the current site and what potentially is proposed in the green space that we have currently for that new instructional wing. Still going to be conversation about the question around renovate versus replace with the existing structure. And that's part of what the Citizens Advisory Group will help the Board of Education and County Commissioners decide. But ultimately, we are looking at a 74,000 square foot building that will hold 2 learning centers, a music and a media center, as well as an administrative building to allow teaching and learning to continue as we then move into phase two of the project. And you can see that total cost there is that $20 million. So that is an overview of the high school project, and I'm so happy to be here to share that with you, and definitely honored to be a part of this process, which is a generational affair for us to engage with. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Nelson Spears, who's going to talk a little bit about the benefits that it will bring to both downtown Edenton and our county.
Thank you, Dr. Sasser, and thank you, Town Council, for having us here tonight. Destination Downtown Edenton Board of Directors, when the high school issue was first brought up, you know, we took an active role and decided that, of course, originally location was the key issue. And our board voted unanimously that we wanted the high school to remain in downtown Edenton, that our businesses and our vibrant business district is a great partnership or collaboration we have with the high school, and we didn't want to see that to change. And so along those lines, if we're going to be fully advocates for a location to remain downtown, we also are going to be fully advocates to help get it funded and see it through to fruition. And that's what the sales tax increase brought up. So again, our board voted unanimously to help to make a financial donation to help with some of the marketing and materials to help get the sales tax issue passed on the ballot coming up. But downtown Edenton, our businesses, in our conversations, a sales tax is sometimes a hard sale for our businesses to support a sales tax. But we feel like Edenton and Chowan County are unique, and we have a community school right here, and we want to see that, you know, come to fruition. And again, I want to thank Dr. Sasser and the vision of the Board of Education and County Commissioners for what we can do with this property. All the positive impacts it can have, keeping our students right here in our school district, not losing them to surrounding schools or other opportunities. We have a school system that would attract other students to want to come here versus us having students leave. Same thing with faculty. You know, an attractive school, a high school that has the latest technologies and tools for education, we can attract the best of the best teachers and administrative personnel to come. And that's going to have a trickle-down effect. If we have a great high school that is attractive for our students and our teachers and our administration, that's going to flow down to our downtown district. Sports facilities, Dr. Sasser shared some of the vision for what they would do there with the soccer field, the tennis courts needing to be refurbished, things like that. When you're able to bring those people into Edenton in such a close proximity to downtown, there's an obvious trickle-down effect for our restaurants, for our businesses. It's a win-win situation. Don't want to go too long. I know many of you have had conversations, and several of you are on our board, but thank you very much for your leadership on this issue. We thank you for your support, and we eagerly look forward to hopefully a passage on this ballot issue and where it can lead us. Thank you.
I'm just going to say something really quick. My name is Joy Marville, and I'm the chairman of the Edenton Educational Foundation. First of all, let me thank you for placing this microphone here where I can actually reach it. Dr. Sasser's a little bit nervous right now because he has no idea what I'm about to say. As the person who is responsible for raising money for the school system, that's what the Educational Foundation does. So we raise money for the school system. We do mini grants for teachers. We help with literacy programs. People come to us when they want to memorialize a loved one and put that money towards a scholarship or something like that. So my job as the Educational Foundation Chair is to ask for money constantly. And I'm also involved with that in the Historical Commission side, where I'm working as the Executive Director there. So I'm constantly asking people for money. And so often people they love to give something, but they just don't. 2020. The beauty of this situation and this tax is that everybody in this community can feel good about helping out. Everybody can support, everybody can participate on some level. And so in the final product, everybody can say, I helped make that happen. And I think that that is really important for everyone to keep in mind. This is a very easy way for everyone to contribute. Thank you guys so much for your time and for everything you do for this town. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Simpson.
It's an honor. It's obvious that we have a tremendous village, and we talk about it takes a village. And so again, I want to thank Nelson Spear, Destination Downtown, Joy Harful, the Edenton Chowan Education Foundation, and certainly the town of Edenton. Thank you so much for your time, and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Is there a term limit on the sales tax increase, or is that sort of an ongoing existing increase?
Existing.
Will it always be for educational purposes?
Not necessarily, and so certainly the county commissioners could veto that resolution and prioritize those capital funds for other sources, is my understanding.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you. Not Dr. Sasser, Nelson, Joy, we thank you very much for your time and patience and coming here and speaking for us. The council has already issued a proclamation supporting the 4% increase on sales tax. And I think it's important to say that, you know, 0.25% on a $50 purchase is 12 cents. So it's not much. And I think that's important to be said. And it, of course, I noticed on some of the wording that you had up there that 30% of this money will probably come from people that are traveling through. So I think both of those things are important to be said. So thank you for your presentation, and we support it 100%.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is the progress report on the improvement to the sanitary sewer system, wastewater treatment plant renovations and expansions cost plans. And I'll call on Anne Marie to introduce the Luton Company team assisting us with this capital improvement project. Did she leave?
She went to get Corey.
Oh, okay.
Corey's part of this.
Good evening, everyone. Anne Marie, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Fantastic, including the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Great. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Gary Hartong, and thank you, Anne Marie, and hello to Mayor Stallings and members of the council for allowing us to present to you virtually tonight. I've had the pleasure of meeting many of you before, but I also understand there's some new faces on the council, so thank you for this opportunity. It has been a number of months since I've personally had this opportunity to discuss this project with the town council, so I thought it might be prudent to approach this presentation in two parts: where we were in 2017 and where we are headed now. And we're going to cover a lot of ground tonight. We really don't have time to get into the nitty-gritty details, but there are a couple of highlights that I would like to hit. Some of them will seem like review, and that's okay. But at the conclusion, the council should be thinking in what direction it intends to head, whether to confirm its previous notion or to pursue another direction. And there is a timeline that we are subject to without terribly much wiggle room, as I'll discuss as we move through the presentation. So let's take a step back 3 years and analyze the situation at the time. Generally speaking, the town was in non-compliance with its non-discharge permit for its wastewater treatment facility. And you may ask, why? Well, there were several reasons, some of which are noted up here on the slide. First and foremost, there was a spray field reduction in the wetted acreage from 300 to 230 acres. That was a 70-acre net loss. And the permit was modified to reflect this reduction in wetted acreage, but not the permitted flow rate of 1.076 million gallons per day. Secondly, we were experiencing rainfall, increases in rainfall totals for really 5 straight years, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. The state had advised operations staff to maintain an irrigation rate of about 47 inches per year, which subsequently led to ponding of water on the spray field and growth of new wetlands type vegetation, both of which are considered to be non-compliant with the non-discharge permit. So let's take a look at the wastewater flows. Really, I want to concentrate on the left half of this screen at this time, looking at the years 2012 to 2016. You see 3 lines there and 1 set of bars. I'll talk about those briefly. The green line that you see at the bottom, that represents the average billed sewer for that month in million gallons per day. So for instance, in October of 2012, that was 0.388 MGD. If you convert it, it's 388,000 gallons per day. What you see above that in the orange line is the influent flow that is being accepted at the wastewater treatment plant on New Mexico Road. So you'll see that flow is about 0.647 MGD, which is higher than the 0.388 that is actually being billed to your customers. The top bar, this blue bar, this is the 1.076 MGD. So this page shows that your orange line is not above that 1.076 MGD, but you were still in non-compliance, or the town was in non-compliance with its permit. These bars represent, and they're indicated with these numbers here, the bars represent annual rainfall. So we had about 46 inches of rainfall in 2012, and in 2016, 5 years later, the town experienced 82.71 or 83 inches of rainfall. I think we had a couple of hurricanes that year, which contributed to that high amount of rainfall, and coincidentally, the high flow that you see of that year of 0.82 MGD. So rainfall totals, again, when we were in this position in 2017, had been up about 80%. Billed sewer was at about the same level throughout, if not a slight decrease. And so where is this additional flow coming from? Well, that is attributed to I&I, also known as inflow and infiltration. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I&I was also up about 27% during this time frame. Again, so you were in a non-compliance condition while we're still beneath this permitted flow rate. This excessive flow, primarily due to I&I and other factors, was contributing to non-compliance with the permit, and the town had an uphill battle on its hands. You might remember this slide from that presentation back in 2017. This is a heat chart, and I really don't want you to try and focus on the numbers because there's a lot of them and they're very small. But what I want you to take away from this particular slide is that the green is the lowest number. Yellow are mid-range numbers, and the red are the highest numbers. And what these represent are the loading rates to your spray fields during the 2014 to 2016 timeframe. And the permitted rate during this, as indicated in the permit, is 47 inches per year. During this time frame, none of these numbers represent less than 47 inches per year. Your lowest here in green in the bottom left-hand corner is about 48 inches. Your highest loaded field was field number 9 in April 2016 that experienced about 82 inches of application. So there was no indication of compliance. Again, your operators were dealing with increased I&I from increased rainfall, a number of factors, some other conditions were pushing the spray field literally to the limit, and the town was unable to spray at rates that kept the freeboard or kept the amount of wastewater in the treatment lagoon at its permitted level. So if you recall, the town was really in a predicament with the NC Division of Water Quality. They had come out, they had done an inspection, they had noticed the issues. They began looking at the irrigation records, some other records, and really had some, really put the town in a position where it had to do something to take corrective action. And so after meetings with Division of Water Quality, it was decided to submit a special order by consent. That was done in 2017. Within that special order of consent, there were stipulated deadlines, and those are shown down the left-hand side of the screen. What you'll see as you move through that original special order of consent required the town to be in compliance with its permit by the year 2020, essentially where we are today. As part of this special order of consent, the town was asked to look at several alternatives, and we're going to talk about those to get back in compliance with the permit. Something to keep in or to note here was during the terms of the special order of consent, the town is under a sewer connection moratorium. The town negotiated up front to be able to add some commercial and industrial flow along the way, but was not allowed to add additional residential connections unless there were repairs being made to the system to offset that additional flow. During the time frame, the required in the soils or groundwater and engineering evaluations of the existing facilities, there was an opportunity or requirement for the town to obtain funding and perform engineering design if it was going to make improvements to its system, and then enter a 2-year period of construction that would have put us in compliance with the permit at this time. So at that time, we were looking at really 4 available options to us. First one, and I should say that these options are not mutually exclusive. So a combination of one or more is a combination of 2 or more is possible. The do nothing alternative was quickly eliminated. That was really to take no action and be subject to notices of violations and civil penalties up to an amount of $25,000 per day. That is an expensive alternative for choosing not to take any action. Collection system rehabilitation, I talked about that inflow and infiltration that had increased by 27%. There's an opportunity to look at to inspect and look at the collection system and try to reduce that extraneous flow that was entering the system. Also looking at expanding the non-discharge wastewater treatment plant. So you currently have a treatment lagoon and spray fields. None of your water is discharged to a surface water that leads to the Chowan River. So one option was, let's look at the existing spray field, see if we can make some improvements to it, and then look for adjacent property in order to expand it so we can reduce the hydraulic loading to the existing fields. And then the last option was to construct a new discharge wastewater treatment plant. If you recall back in 1982, the reason that the initial spray field was constructed was to remove the discharge from the Chewan River. So this would essentially be going back to the type of discharge that the town had prior to 1982. Realistic options. When we last met, we're looking at a combination of the middle two alternatives. We narrowed from 4 options to 2 options and really got to work immediately. Again, do nothing was not an alternative. Too costly. A new discharge to the nutrient-sensitive Chewan River Basin was the least desirable option by the Division of Water Quality, and really a driving force behind these 2 realistic options. Again, collection system rehab. Let's evaluate target problem areas in the system. Where can we get the most bang for our buck for reducing extraneous groundwater or rainwater that's entering the system? Again, unfortunately, collection system rehab is not a one and done solution. It has a tendency, I has a tendency to move from one area to another. As soon as you make one area stronger, the groundwater is going to look for the next weakest source. So it's a continuous program that the town tries to stay in front of and address those high priority areas. The second option was, let's take a look at the non-discharge plant, our existing facility, cleaning out. There's some solids deposition within the treatment lagoon. Let's clean those out to create additional treatment and storage volume. Look at the existing spray fields. What improvements could be done to make those operate better? Is there improvements to the way that they are sprayed? Are there improvements to the vegetation that are on the spray fields now? Are there better operational means by which we can make the spray fields operate more smoothly and be able to really key in on some environmental factors to make those operate as efficiently as possible? And then lastly, as part of that, looking at adjacent property to expand the wetted area. So that is really where we were in 2017. And let's take a look at what has happened. Again, the town has taken some actions, and I'll talk about those here, with regards to both the collection system and the treatment system. But let's take a look at where we sit about 4 years later. Looking at the environmental conditions, have those conditions changed? Then we'll look at the available options to move forward. Is there more than one at this point in time? And then the town council should be able to make a more informed decision on what direction it wants to move as the clock is currently ticking with the Division of Water Quality. So I want to revisit this slide, and this time I want to focus on the right-hand side of the slide. This is again, the precipitation and the flow rates that the town is experiencing. I think this tells a different story than what we saw from 2012 to 2016. The gray bars, those columns, indicate that annual precipitation is relatively back to normal or down from where it was 4 years ago. The orange line indicates a 3-year decrease from 2018 to 2020 in the influent wastewater flows coming in to the facility. And the green line indicates that the billed wastewater usage is about the same as expected. The difference, again, between that orange line and the green line, that space, is significant. That gap is decreasing, and that indicates that the unbilled inflow and infiltration is also decreasing. This is a busy graph, and I want to concentrate on this is the last year of rainfall versus influent flow. So this represents 1 year of the blue showing the precipitation events every day, the orange representing the wastewater treatment flow that is coming into the facility, And I think you'll see some progress here. There is some trends that are developing. The reason we don't have this data prior to the last year is because the new SCADA system had not yet been installed, providing us these daily figures. So this is very telling of what we're seeing. But the trends that we're seeing is that the wastewater flows increase. They correspond with rainfall. Well, that is to be expected. That is that is not atypical from other communities in Eastern North Carolina that are subject to high levels of inflow and infiltration. But the observation I want us to focus on is over here on the right-hand side of the screen. You can see where these blue spikes are significantly higher on the right side of the screen than they are on the left, but the orange spikes are not going to the same level, the same height as they were when the blue spikes on the left-hand side of the screen were showing up, those rainfalls. So that tells us that the recent actions taken by the town to address inflow and infiltration in its collection system is having a positive impact. This orange dotted line that you see that is decreasing is a real positive sign given the big rainfalls that we've seen here in July and August of 2020. I've talked a lot about the actions that have been taken by the town, and this really summarizes it for the last 2 years. You may recall that Red Zone was in town and they videoed 100,000 linear feet of sewer with the town's crew's assistance in 2018. And in 2019, that work was mostly funded by a Golden Leaf grant opportunity. After that data was collected, the Wooten Company and the town reviewed and assessed that data and began to prioritize what sections of town were worse than the other. And we'll talk about that on the next slide. We can show that real quick. But we worked with the town in preparing a $975,000 application using Clean Water SRP funds. That project was bid and is really encompassing the area of Stratford Road, Oakham, King, and Wood Avenue. The project consists approximately of about 3,500 feet of replacement, 6,000 feet of rehabilitation, with 10 manholes being replaced and 100 services as well, services to residences and businesses. Construction is about 10 months underway. As I mentioned, the priorities were really grouped into 2 levels. On this slide, the red lines are the high priority. Those are priority 1 areas. The yellow indicates priority 2 or the medium priority areas. Not saying that there are not issues in other parts of the collection system that aren't highlighted, but these represent the areas that were identified by Red Zone and then reviewed by the town and the Wooten Company to take some action in order to reduce those I&I levels. So what are the next steps? We're working again to finish up the project now that is underway, but again, to continue this effort in order to reduce flow into the plant, the town is considering preparing a funding application in the spring of 2021 to go after the other high priority sewer areas. And no presentation would be complete without a picture of a manhole in it. So this is this particular photo is manhole 101, and you'll see the notation at the bottom. The bottom of that manhole actually resides beneath sea level. So you can imagine the amount of pressure, groundwater pressure, that manhole is seeing, being a brick and mortar manhole. With age and with traffic, that will break down, and there's no really pushing back the sea unless you come back with a new manhole and really get that thing as watertight as possible to prevent that extraneous flow coming into the system. So how about the treatment system? We've talked about the collection system. Let's talk about the treatment system. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the special order by consent requirements, really the first thing we had to do was get an idea of what were the soils and the vegetation on those soils, how are they performing, and should there be new hydraulic loading rates assigned to those. And I'll talk about those in just a moment. That's one of the very first things that we did coming out of the meeting with Division of Water Quality. The other thing I think is very significant is that the town was able to achieve compliance for 34 straight months now with its non-discharge permit. And that was done primarily through clearing some drainage ditches, adjusting the lagoon levels and the spray schedule. The town enacted some best management practices and really jumped in to repairing parts of the spray field that were not operating correctly, and then doing some additional maintenance. And I think credit can be certainly given to Corey Gooden and his staff. They knew they had issues. They went out there. They wasted no time and to return the site to the best of its operating condition under the circumstances that it was. So with some a lot of hard work and a lot of thinking and a lot of time and effort, again, by Corey and his staff, they have now been 34 months compliant with the permit. However, that did not necessarily relieve the town from complying with the special order by consent schedule. As part of that, we performed, I say we as in the Wooten Company, prepared a preliminary engineering report for both NCDEQ and USDA. It was essentially the same report, but in different formats. The latter one for USDA to request funding to make improvements to the existing facilities on New Mexico Road. USDA, after review of the initial report, we made some modifications to it. And really, that was to separate the project, the treatment plant project, into two phases. The first phase being improvement of the existing spray fueling facilities. That's what was funded by USDA in the amount of $6 million. That commitment or that presentation was made to the council, I believe, in May of 2020. And then they have not yet committed to phase two because there are still some outstanding questions that need to be answered or designs that need to be finalized based on some other factors that preclude immediate pursuit of those funds. And we'll talk about those in just a minute. But so you know, again, phase one, improving the existing spray field, is under permitting review at this time. It has been submitted to the regulatory agencies. They are reviewing the plans and specifications. We will be receiving permits probably within the next 30 to 60 days, at which time the town will be able to put those improvements out to bid. Secondly, or I should say as an aside to this, we had to request a 15-month extension of the SOC from NCDEQ. And the main reason for that is because the special order by consent dictated that both phase one and phase two be complete to exit or to get out from under the SOC. Now, there's another option there, but really Robert Tankard and his staff fully believed that improvements not only needed to be made to the existing spray field, but that the town needed to take additional action in order to either expand the existing spray field or to construct a new BNR, and excuse me, that is biological nutrient removal wastewater treatment plant. Going back just to show you, and this is really the reasoning behind the Division of Water Quality's position. The soil scientist and agronomic evaluation that was performed back in 2018 revealed that the existing spray fields with the reduced acreage, with the type of cover crop, with a number of environmental factors that have been updated in the last 40 years since the original treatment plant was constructed, that he recommended that about 500,000 gallons per day of wastewater be the upper threshold. Again, right now what's permitted is 1.076 MGD. So technically you could look at that as a permitted capacity deficit of just over 500,000 gallons per day. If you want to look at that in real terms and where we're at today, aside from the permit, that's what's shown on the lower half of this. Again, the soil scientist recommendation of a 0.5 MGD. The average daily flow at the plant between 2012 and 2019 was just over 700,000 gallons per day, or 0.701 MGD. So the actual treatment capacity deficit is just under 0.2 MGD, or 200,000 gallons per day. And it is this deficit that the Division of Water Quality is seeking or is asking the town of Edenton to address. So again, there's multiple alternatives to consider. The do nothing, we talked about that earlier, that's expensive. Or it could be potentially expensive if DWQ decided to assess notices of violation and civil penalties. Optimizing current operations of the existing treatment plant, we've moved down that road. Improving existing facilities and expanding the non-discharge spray field, or improving the existing facilities and constructing a new surface discharge wastewater treatment plant. This is really it in a more graphical form. If the town wishes to return to its 1.1 permitted MGD, the existing wastewater treatment plant improvements will provide about 500,000 gallons per day. And there are two new alternatives that can be examined to make up the additional 0.6 MGD. I won't jump into these too closely, but optimizing current operations, again, dredging the lagoon to create more storage volume and treatment volume, clearing some underbrush in the spray field to allow the sprinklers to spray a little bit further, and improving site drainage. All of these have an estimated cost of about $565,000 in construction. And this work is really being rolled into the phase 1 project that I previously talked about. So let's talk about phase 1. Phase 1 really involves making improvements to the lagoon, to the main pump station, and to the spray fields themselves. These improvements, let me start by saying what you see here on the right-hand side of the screen is the current main irrigation pump station. It is in need of equipment upgrade and some additional appurtenances to help it operate better. But our key focus for this particular phase is the 42 zone spray field. Again, there are 42 zones out there right now, and currently that is done, or that is operated manually. Your operators drive into the field every couple of hours, depending on the spray schedule, to manually open and close valves based on those field conditions and the appropriate irrigation rate. The new system that we're talking about as part of phase 1 will allow for automated operation. It will allow those zones, the valves serving those zones to be opened and closed from a central control station there at the treatment plant. And it will also allow, the SCADA will allow that to be really fine-tuned so that multiple zones can be irrigated at once or in a series of fashions in order to minimize the impacts on the existing spray field. We're looking at about a $4.5 million construction cost. And again, these improvements will recuperate or will hold the 0.5 MGD in capacity. Looking to recuperate the other 0.6 MGD, again, there's two options. The goal is really to acquire adjacent property to reduce wastewater transmission and pumping costs, generally closer sites to the existing plant, have potential to generate more attentiveness by the operators, really try to avoid the out of sight, out of mind scenario. Spray field sites will vary based on the soil types. Less suitable sites generally require greater acreage needs. And 4 candidate sites near the existing treatment plant have been identified. And those range from 185 to 426 acres. But the amount of wastewater that can be put on those sites varies based on the different soil types and the buffers that must be maintained from surface waters and other objects that are currently on those sites. So if the town were to continue to move in this direction, expanding the spray field, we talked about the 4.5 million in existing costs. We're looking at potentially about 6.8 million in new construction costs for about 11.3 million in construction to provide 1.1 MGD of capacity. The ideal site characteristics, again, there might be other sites in the northern part of the county that we have not yet identified, but there are certainly 4 candidate sites that we have identified. Again, the construction costs on these are going to vary based on those overall acreage requirements. And like the existing site, we would control the new site with automated valves and a SCADA system. And this photo here is an aerial view of the treatment and storage lagoon showing the main pump station in the administration building. If the town is unable to identify a non-discharge site to expand its spray field, another option would be to look at a mechanical form of treatment. In this case, a biological nutrient removal system as an alternate means of treatment and disposal. The idea here would be to supplement the existing half MGD non-discharge system with a new 600,000 or 0.6 MGD mechanical system. Another alternative might be to construct a 1.1 MGD BNR system at a higher cost, discharging 0.5 MGD to the spray field and the remaining 0.6 MGD to the Chowan River. So there's a couple of scenarios you could look at there. But in either case, this option will face much greater permitting challenges. Again, since Edenton's located in the nutrient-sensitive Chowan River Basin, and will not be the preferred alternative by DE/NC Division of Water Quality. Environmental review and permitting review would be much more painstaking moving in this direction. But I should say that it's not impossible. The town of Ahoskie converted its non-discharge facility into a BNR discharge system about 9 years ago, but only after every other avenue was exhausted for them. So this is a good example of what a BNR facility might look like. In your neighboring Hertford County, town of Ahoskie, this system was completed. This is a 1.3 MGD facility with room to expand. It's about a $10.5 million project, and that was completed in 2011, so about 9 years ago. And it was really a 7-year project to get this particular facility designed, constructed, or designed, permitted, and constructed. So you may be asking, what is the recommended alternative? We've really talked about 4 of them. What I'm showing here is the estimated total project costs for each of those. In the previous slides, I talked about just really the construction costs. if we add in contingency, and if we add in technical services and rough expected land acquisition costs, this really gives you a truer picture of what the total project cost might look like. Assuming that the amount of acreage acquired is about 260 acres. So phase 1 is the phase we're currently permitting now. Again, that is funded by USDA in the amount of $6 million. Phase 2, looking at expansion of the non-discharge spray facility, would be about $9.3 million. And you're probably asking yourself, why is that one? Why is the non-discharge expansion favored over the new B&R discharge facility? Well, construction costs, in the end, they may come out roughly equal. But in order to evaluate these, we look at a 20-year operations span for the project. And quite simply, the B&R option has higher annual and operation costs in the form of electricity, chemicals, equipment replacement, labor. So over a 20-year period, that option really is about $5 million higher than expansion of the non-discharge spray facility. And so this is the direction that we were pursuing or are pursuing from direction of the town council in 2018. So since 2018, we have had we have hit a number of hurdles, and we are not at a point where we have identified a site to expand the non-discharge facility. I previously mentioned the delay in the funding commitment from USDA. We had to sort through some things there. The town, at the same time, as you all know, is pursuing stormwater projects. It's pursuing streets repaving projects. We talked earlier about the neighborhood revitalization projects that the town is currently involved in. And then you also have a water treatment plant project, all within this 2018 to 2020 timeframe. So the town is not sitting still. This particular project, or this phase of this project, just has hit some hurdles. And at the same time, though, I do want to mention that Corey and his staff have done an excellent job of operating the existing facility to the best of their abilities in order to achieve and maintain that compliance with the permit. And then to add that on top of that, we had the onset of COVID in spring 2020, which has suspended the town's non-essential operations. So we've got some hurdles, or have hit some hurdles. The town has simply been unable to secure land access for the necessary soils and groundwater investigations that are required as part of the existing SOC schedule. And that really put us in a bind. And we had a meeting about 2 weeks ago with the Division of Water Quality, which put us in position to request an SOC amendment to the original schedule. And you'll see I've underlined the word request on this slide because this by no means is approved. We requested a 15-month extension, and 15 months is really a compressed schedule for the amount of work that needs to be accomplished. Shown in this requested schedule are the major milestones. So this is where we sit today. Action, like I said, immediate action was taken by January of 2022. Engineering design and permitting and all the associated technical services need to be complete and submitted to Division of Water Quality for review. Construction, as requested, to be completed by February of 2024, with final compliance approximately 4 months later in June of 2024. So what are our next steps? If the town elects to move forward with expansion of the non-discharge facility, or probably the more complicated B&R type facility, there are many steps to be taken as outlined in this schedule. And these are some major highlights. Most of the work is really behind the scenes field work and engineering work. The town will need to apply for funding from USDA or another source. I think USDA provided a very favorable loan grant option to the town earlier, so they may be the preferred source to go after again. And to begin landowner access and purchase negotiations. That'll be another step that the town will work closely with the town to do. But essentially, we'll need to be ready to present plans and specifications to NC DEQ, the Division of Water Quality, about 1 year from now, with funding in hand and with an option. We'll need to talk to USDA about what they'll require in terms of commitment for land purchase or land lease. You'll see at the bottom the ... There's also an option that the town requests the SOC to be rescinded. And while that is certainly an option, I do think it carries some risk. The town is unable to control the environmental conditions, unable to control the precipitation conditions. While it's making great strides in the I&I reduction, I&I is a constant battle. And heavier rainfall years can result in heavier amounts of inflow and infiltration. And town was thankfully spared this year from hurricanes, as many hurricanes as we've seen the activity. So I think it's in a wet year or wet years, should the Division of Water Quality come back to inspect the facility, and although the town is doing everything it can to maintain and operate the existing facility, it could find itself back in this same situation if it doesn't move forward with either expanding the existing spray field or constructing a new mechanical form of treatment. So with that, I'll pause and I'll allow Anne Marie to make comment, or I'll be happy to answer any questions or comments from the town council.
Mayor,
Does anyone have any questions?
I was just gonna say first, thank you, Gary. You did a terrific job walking us through where we were and where we are. So thank you. And I also want to thank Corey and his staff for the great work that they've done. He's doing great things. But I think we're at the point where, the previous council had decided that we needed to go forward with expansion. And that is, my recommendation still. We cannot risk a Hurricane Matthew or another big rainy season to cause us to be in violation. So hopefully our request for the amendment of the SOC will be approved, but we've got to be ready to go and to start really seriously looking at alternative sites. We have a narrow list, but we're going to have to work with Hood, with the town attorney, to work with property owners to gain permission to do some of the soils analysis work that is needed. So that would be my recommendation. And I'm sorry, I just saw your hand. Go ahead.
I'm concerned about the part that they're let treated sewer go into the Swan River. I thought it was against the law that any sewer, raw sewer or treated sewer, to go into waterways.
You're correct. It is. That's not permitted. But the technology that is permitted, it involves a lot of treatment. It has to get a lot of the bad nutrients out, and the discharge. If we were to get approved, is allowed. But as Gary said, that approval process is really, really tough. Gary, do you have any more to offer to that?
No, I think that's a very good response, Anne Marie. It is it will be the last option that the Division of Water Quality will consider, but they will consider it. We will just have to prove that there is no other way of disposing of wastewater in another manner before they will support that alternative.
Does anyone else have any questions of Gary? If not, Gary, we certainly appreciate you giving us all this information. I hope we're not going to be tested on all this information that we've been given, but we thank you for it.
Certainly, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity, and there will not be a test. I know, I covered a lot of ground very quickly and used a lot of acronyms, so I apologize for that. But I'm confident that working with the town and with the council, we'll come to a successful, come up with a successful project to pursue with USDA as our partner.
Thank you again, and we know that we've got a lot of work to do to get busy on this, and so again, thank you for your time and all this information.
Thank you.
Are we facing any fines at this time?
We got our amendment in prior to the deadline, so
Okay.
hopefully we'll be in good shape there. Thanks to Gary's help.
All right, the next item on our agenda is something that
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
should be near and dear to all of us as hard, and that's the 2020 census. And we need to really get the information out there on that for people to. It has, thankfully, the deadline has been extended to October the 31st, which it was originally September 31st. And as of yesterday, only 55% of our county had sent in their information. So we would please encourage everybody to either go online to 2020census.gov, or they can phone in. It only takes a couple of minutes. The telephone number is 844-330-2020. It only takes a couple of minutes, and it's important to us because it gives us $1,600 per person for 10 years, and it amounts to about $10 million. So that is certainly a lot to think about, and we need to try to get as many people to fill out that information as possible.
Mayor, those who don't, will they be following up by visit?
They had planned to start that, Anne Marie needs some help on this, but they had planned to start door to door August the 1st, I believe. But due to the pandemic, they're not doing that. Is that correct?
Mayor, I'll have to check my notes on that.
I think
I know it was delayed, but yeah.
They had already had teams lined up that were supposed to start that on August.
It only takes a couple minutes to fill out the minute.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
What was that phone number again?
It's 844 330 2020.
2020.
Yes, sir. So please, everybody, mention to you folks, and as you run into people on the street, please ask them to do that. The deadline again is October 31st. So let's please try to get the word out as much as we possibly can. Okay, moving on now, we'll go to our committee reports. Our first one is the administrative committee, chaired by Councilman Hyde.
Thank you, Mayor Stallings. We only have one item for action tonight. At our previous committee meetings, It was recommended that council approve a proposal for professional services to update the Edenton Historic Design guidelines. And there was a general consensus that that was overdue and that we needed to do that. So I'll put that in the form of a motion that we approve that proposal.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, the next thing on our agenda is Public Works, and that is chaired by Councilman Miller.
Mayor, we only have one item, business. Mayor, as discussed at our committee meeting on September 28th, there are several streets in town, 7 to be exact, that were repaired due to the $1 million sanitary sewer inflow infiltration project that need to be added to the Phase 2 street repair resurfacing project. And with that said, I put this change order request in form of a motion.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So we will add those extra streets onto our resurfacing project.
That includes Pembroke too.
That one is planned, but that is not on this change order. They're
Just the other side.
Corey and Barnhill and the engineer have to do some field work together.
Okay. All right, our next committee is the Finance Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Dixon.
And it's recommended that council authorize the small business, nonprofit, and utility assistance for COVID-19 grant programs as presented. And I'll put that in the motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And the next is new business, and I will call on Ms. Knighton to walk us through that.
Okay, Mayor, and we're presenting the resolution that the town attorney drafted. Excuse me, this is regarding the intent for the town council to authorize exchange of property for Batham Road that will be realigned. And this resolution calls for a public hearing to be held at your October 26th meeting and requires notice and advertising, which we're doing. And I think Councilman High wanted to make a statement.
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor and fellow council members, you'll recall the previous 2 times that we discussed the CVS project, I asked that my fellow councilman allow me to be recused because I do represent an adjoining property owner, and if all of this passes, then I will be representing that property owner in the sale of their property to CVS. We've discussed it before, and the town attorney agreed that that's a conflict, so I would just ask that there be a motion by someone in a second to allow me to recuse myself under those circumstances.
We have a motion. Sorry, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Mayor.
You are recused.
Thank you, sir.
And Mayor, just for the record, I wanted to note that the developers with CVS, I believe, are Zooming with us. Mr. Marshall Hart and Trey Hart and Jordan Brewer and Terry Douglas. And they've been waiting patiently, listening to our meeting for this action tonight.
Thank you for being patient.
So you'll need a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved, Mayor. So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second. Second. We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right. Thank you, CBS team. Mayor, the next item is The next item is a request for you all to approve or authorize a lease agreement for the maintenance hangar at the airport. You recall several months ago, you authorized a budget amendment to pay for some much-needed improvements to the hangar, and it was hoped at that time, it wasn't, the deal hadn't been sealed, so to speak, but it was hoped that an aircraft mechanic would be signing a lease to use this facility. And that has come to fruition, or will come to fruition if you approve this lease agreement. And many thanks to Airport Manager Harry Davis and the Airport Commission, especially Chairman Callback and the Vice Chairman Chuck Schmealer, and then also a shout out to Bud Powell, our purchasing agent, who worked with Harry to coordinate all of the contractors that worked on the improvements. So Hood developed the lease agreement, and we recommend approval. You saw the terms summarized in the management report. I think it's going to be a great addition to the airport. This mechanic has an established business, an established clientele, and so I think we'll see more aviation activity at the airport, which will hopefully result in more fuel sales and bring more revenue to the community. So hope that you'll approve the lease agreement.
Mayor, make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have one question. How long is the lease agreement? Is it a 2-year agreement or?
It is, it's,
Okay.
There's a fee for the first year, and then it's slightly increased in the second year. And then we would hope that we would be able to extend and, develop, renegotiate and extend the lease.
Will Harry allow us to go out and see?
Yes, he would. He told me to tell you that he's going to be calling you all and inviting you out for a tour. And I think the Airport Commission is supposed to hold their meeting in the hangar next week.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, Mayor, this is kind of fun, this next item. We have been looking for several years for a replacement trolley. A wonderful trolley that we have. It's a 1993 trolley. We obtained that through a grant from DOT, not in 1993, but we've had it, I think we've had it for at least 20 years. But it is one part away from, I think, being sidelined.
Our maintenance people have done a great job keeping that going.
They have. And I have to give a shout out to Tammy's husband. We had an emergency on a weekend for a wedding rental recently, and something went wrong, and our mechanic was out of town. And Woody is the mechanic at the for the school system, and he used to work with us, and he came out and helped us get it straight. But he told me, he said, Miss Anne Marie, that trolley is not gonna make it much longer. And we have been looking, and so our garage supervisor has been working, trying to find one, and one has come available, and you read his report. It's a 2012, gently used, has had some engine replacements and transmission, which were unusual, but those are, relatively new components. So we feel really good about this trolley. And Virginia worked really hard to get interest from banks, and today we did receive a proposal from BB&T. We had also received a proposal from Atlantic Union. The proposal from BB&T, or I think it's called Truist. I would recommend that you consider the option for a 7-year loan for 2.14%, and that annual payment is $12,116. The revenue that we receive from the trolley is generally, we budget around $25,000 a year. We always come in higher than that. And then I asked Virginia today, based on COVID, where are we? But we were only, for the first quarter of this year, we were only $500 less than where we were. So really appreciate the commission being open and providing the docent to give the tours. So I'm confident that we can, between additional rentals, because the trolley will be new, we can rent it more on weekends for activities. And I think that the great marketing job that we're doing, that we'll be able to secure funds to cover the debt service payment without having to raise any of your fees. So, there's a resolution that we sent out that would authorize the lease. I'm sorry, it's called an installment purchase contract with the bank. So we'd ask that you consider approving that tonight.
Okay. So we
Second.
have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Look like a nice try.
Yeah, it did. And it's got the Allison transmission and I forgot to come over there. I know that Allison transmission is supposed to be really good. We got what kind of engine it says. Freightliner. Got a Freightliner engine. So everybody.
I had one question. Do we have any plans for the existing trolley? I've seen some very creative things done with old trolleys, and
We'll talk about that. I asked Mike, the mechanic, the supervisor today, could we keep it? Could we use it? He's like, no, please.
well, I've seen a cafe. Yeah, restaurants, all kinds of stuff.
We'll talk about it.
Sorry, man, I just get excited about all the trolleys. No, West King Street.
Any
You got a
further?
lot inside you.
I know.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Get your trolley.
All right, Mayor, the next item is one that the council has discussed several times recently, is to support the effort to help with the redevelopment of Cadiz Church into a cultural center. And the council had talked about appropriating some funds that you all have received as the result of the sales of the redevelopment properties. And I asked Hood for advice on how to structure that. And he responded with a couple options, and the most clear-cut one that makes perfect sense to me is you all authorize the payment directly to the consultant that is doing the fundraising work. That way you don't have to rely on the commission then to report back and make sure that everything was done. You would be contracting for, I think we said $18,000. And if you're all comfortable with that, that's what, one of Hood's options, and it really, I think, makes sense and is.
Great option. Consultants happy with that too. So.
Okay. And so what we would need, Mayor, is if you would make a motion to approve that, and then also authorize us to spend $18,000 out of that contingency line item, because we put the revenue came in, it's in on the revenue side, but then we put it in a contingency line item, and we're not allowed to spend contingency without council approval. So that would be part of the motion.
I suspect Councilman.
Yeah, so
Dixon will
I
bring
move
that
that we take $18,000 and pay to David Cooper, who is he's the development professional that's been hired for Cadiz Cultural Center. We pay that to him, and then we take it out of the contingency fund. And I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
you know, I would like to, how much money is the area connection going to put with this trip?
Well, we're getting ready, they are getting ready to be asked. So they're talking about that. So that's what, we've got a meeting with, I think they're setting up something with the bishop to talk to him about it. But he's been on the Zoom calls and is much more engaged, and Elder Lee, has been very engaged in the process. So they haven't figured out how much they're gonna put in. Our initial raise is for $1 million, not from the church, but we're trying to raise $1 million. Plus the 250,000 from that we've already got from Sacred Places.
Well, I know this bishop is gonna retire in a year, about another year.
This could be his final project.
And Mayor Stallings, I've said this before, I think if Edenton's going to be known for its history, we need to be known for all of its history, and I think this is a move in the right direction, and I'm proud and thankful for Councilman Dixon's efforts and everyone's efforts. But I'm a strong believer in that.
It's been a big team effort, so it's not, it's everybody. And once again, Anne Marie's really helped out a lot.
Any further discussion?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mayor, the last item is request for a budget amendment. Going back to one of the projects that Gary talked to you about, our sanitary sewer inflow and infiltration project. Part of that investigation of sources of I&I included a really big find that Corey and his team found. Some manholes over near Pembroke Creek behind the marina, the restaurant. When the water level is really high, those manholes just take in a ton of bay water. And that is bad, as you saw from those graphs. We see, and we see the infiltration, and that's taken up valuable capacity. So the engineers designed a fix for that to eliminate the manholes. But that requires the installation of a small pump station to provide service for, I think, just 4 houses on Cypress Drive. And we got funding.
Well, this is at the Little Marine, right, Cypress.
Yes, but it's actually, I think the pump station is actually going to be by Cypress Drive. But the manholes are behind the marina.
Would it be at the end of Cypress Drive?
I don't think it's at the end because it's so low. I think it's a couple houses up. But anyway, we got $47,000 from Golden Leaf to pay for the pump station, and that's what the engineers estimated it would cost. But the price, the change order came in really, really high. The engineers made a lot of changes. Corey recommended some changes, some less complicated electrical equipment and this and that. So anyway, the bottom line is the contractor, after negotiating, has submitted a change order for $93,000. Originally, he was at like 156. We thought it was going to cost 47, but when I talked to the engineer today, he said with price increases with materials and contracts, he doesn't think we're going to get anything better than that. So the town would need to fund $46,180 from water and sewer reserves. We need to do it. I'm going to lose this Golden Leaf money if we don't hurry up and spend it.
Is there a possibility that we could go back to Golden Leaf?
No, they want me to send in the final grant report. They're so angry with me for this taking so long. So, I'm
Where does
sorry, I
that-
didn't mean to be flip, but
No, this,
Where does that put our reserve position once we transfer it?
we have, when I looked, I think we have about 1.8 million in water and sewer reserves.
And all we're asking is 46 to come out of that.
Yes.
Well, I think that's an important number. 46 sounds like a lot of money
Compared with-
to many of us, but that makes me feel better.
Yeah, well, look how much we got in grant, I think that's great.
she need a motion, she does. So, we got a-
Second.
I have a motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. I believe that concludes your,
Yes, sir.
okay. All right, the next item.
Is that all?
That's all.
The next item on our agenda is items considered timely and important. So does anybody up here have anything?
Just two quick ones, Mayor.
Okay.
First, several months ago, Councilman Hyde brought up the idea of adding additional decorative lighting down at the playground. Not so much from a aesthetic point, but also from a safety and security standpoint. Anything going on with that?
Yeah, well, Mike Nichols actually talked to me about that last week, that he had come up with some plans and he wanted to sit down and meet and talk about what we can do. And that's also in conjunction with Christmas, trying to do more lighting for Christmas.
Would look great. The other issue, Mayor, has there been any additional discussion or activity on the request for a second grocery store? Anything coming in the next month or so?
We are actively working with Electricity's, their lead economic developer, Liza Layton from the Edenton Joint Partnership, Kevin Howard, the county manager, and myself. We had a conference call last week talking about incentives that the town and the county might offer, and doing a lot of work, a lot of legwork on that, with Jenny's helping us. One of the clients, one of the second grocers, has met again with the shopping center owner. They exchanged information, and then they both went back and they're doing some more number crunching, and we're hoping that they're going to meet again soon. So it's
So
active.
you feel the shopping center owner is working right along with this?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Just one line. I noticed in the February minutes, we had talked about setting up a task force to look at the boathouse sailing center. I know we've had some problems in having meetings, but wondered if any changes or any progress been made with the boathouse and looking at the plans for that.
So the Elizabeth Van Moore Foundation has been very active looking at possible ways of putting a sort of building down there. They are waiting now for they've met with the electric company, they've met with the Dominion and the phone people. It just takes a long time for those people to get back to you, and so they're waiting sort of for a proposal. But I mean, a whole bunch of energy gone into it. Nothing's happened yet, but we're hopeful.
And Councilman Dixon, one of the concerns that I heard was that any such plan going to provide the sailing clubs and all of that enough space and what they're going to need. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, this proposal that the Elizabeth Van Moore Foundation is putting forward would give educational room, it would give storage room, it would give access to the water, and that, you know, the principal reason I think that we should do this is for teaching young children to sail. And so that's would be my goal in trying to do, because that can bring people out of, you know, poverty and everything else. Sailing is it's something you learn that uses all the skills people have. And so, and they do it as young children on up, because my children have done it. and I think it'd be a great asset for you. So I need to probably reach out, make a couple of phone calls and see where they are, but we are heading in that direction, so.
I call them the boat people, are they aware of what you're?
Yes, they've been to a meeting out there.
Okay, so they're all aware.
Yeah.
Is there a second update on the grocery store? A second grocery store in Edenton?
We should just,
When I responded to Councilman Miller about working with, one of the grocery stores that's very interested. They've met with the shopping center owner, and we have also been working on possible incentives that you all could offer to help close the gap or build the gap. So it's still active, yes, sir.
I will put that to my wife.
Okay.
when do you think Barn Hill will begin work?
I texted Jimmy Spivey, late last week, and he was on vacation, and he said he would reach out to me this week, so he was working on getting all of his bonds and the contracts together for, the town attorney to review.
Anyone else have anything they want to bring forward through? Okay, this time we'll have anybody for public comment. Joy, you're the only one in here.
And I don't want to hold y'all up. I just wanted to say on behalf of Edenton Historical Commission, thank you so much for the new trolley. This is huge for our town, very, very important. And thank you so much for working with us on Kadish. That's exciting. So just wanted to tell you thank you.
Well, Joy, thank you for all the hard work you put in to help the town. So thank you.
Y'all have a good night.
You as well.
Thank you, Joy.
I guess I'm just checking to see if there's anyone in the other room that needed to. There we go.
Good evening.
Just tell us your name and address if you will, please.
Yes, my name is Emma Godfrey, and I live at 165B Old Hertford Road in Edenton. Yes, ma'am. Okay, this is my home where I live at, 165B in the city. Okay, every time, the problem is, every time there's a heavy downpour in the area, my property significantly suffered a nervous flooding because of the town of Edenton is not providing significant drainage system in the community. The town of Edenton does not properly monitor its present drainage system on a regular basis to prevent further property loss. Okay, this is the evidence. Notice the bar in the air conditioning unit on the right side of my home before it rains. This is what it looked like. Now when it rained, and this is not with the storm. This is just like when we get a really heavy downpour of rain. This happens every time it rains, where my barn is it's on the water. On the right-hand side, this is my air conditioning unit. And my air conditioning unit is actually sitting up off of the ground. But the water gets so high until it comes underneath the barn, under the air conditioning unit. And the brown part is the back door, is a back door. Actually, the water comes up to the second or the third steps from the water. You can next one. Also, another evidence is the gas tank in the shed in the rear of the house when it floods. Now, where you see this gas tank, a couple of years ago, the gas tank actually flipped over because of the water. So then I had to call the Ferrogas to come out and get it taken care of. Now, the first question he asked me, was there a smell or was there a leak? And at the time, it wasn't. But they had to come out and set the gas tank back up and put it back up properly. The little shed over there is where my husband keep his lawnmower and, you know, equipment in there. And of course, his push lawnmower got damaged with the water. I mean, this is constantly all the time when it rains heavily. You may go to the next page. The risk is the time of Edenton is negative in this matter. And negative the rest of the local taxpayer concerned. The ability of the town to assist families in a safety and responsible ways. Number 2 is prolonging the water damage underneath my house is a perfect breathing ground for the growth of mold and further threats of our family health. Since the installation is under my house, it gets wet, the water brings it down. Then we have to get somebody out there to re-put the mold back, the insulation back under my house because the water literally goes underneath my house. And this has been going on for numerous of years. And I've been down, you know, several times and said something about it. Every time the shed and the barn is flooded, we have to replace items destroyed by the water. We had to pay for the loss of items out of our pockets. The stress and the tremendous burden of the repetition of flooding impacts our family and harmony of health. The situation has a negative impact on maintaining the value of our property and the collateral selling of gifts for future generations. Let me go to the next one. That the town council would grant permission for the town manager and the public work department to reassess the drainage problem at 165B Overflow Road. And the town council would revise a plan and results and current situation and take steps towards becoming more responsible and visible in providing immediate service and help homeowners in the property of a livelihood. Now, in the back of my home, I don't know if it's another slide, since we can't stop the rain, I just need somebody to please help me in this situation. Behind my house is a stream, and okay.
Behind her house is a ditch, and the ditch is a narrow ditch. So if it rains hard, and the water that's running behind her house comes from Towers Lane, the apartments in Towers Lane, and I can't even call that street over there now. The Gregory Bonstead. Oakdale Drive, all that runs behind her house. And when it's a heavy rain, there's no ditch, there's no shoulder there to house that water, so it just runs out. It runs out over her property, under her house. She's replaced her ductwork for her heating and air conditioning system. And like she said, her insulation under the house has been damaged and stuff. And I'm afraid that she's got mold in her house too.
Councilman Bond, none of us are like water engineers, but could it be a simple solution such as widening, making that ditch bigger, or is there more of a problem than that?
When she showed me her pictures and stuff, and I looked at it, it looked like if the ditch was deeper and just a touch wider, that would probably keep the water in it. That's what it looked like to me. But like you said, I'm no engineer. That's something for.
Where does that ditch drain to?
It drains right back across the road by Carter's Inc. Yeah.
It goes into
The creek, doesn't it?
Creek to Queen Anne Creek,
Goes
behind
into-
Village Creek and then to the creek. But Ms. Hama, is it okay if we make a copy of your presentation?
Perfect fine.
And then I'll talk with Corey. And I know one time we had soil conservation come out and look and see what options could be done, but we can revisit that. And I know I asked Corey to look downstream. I noticed the holding pond between Carter's Inc. and Cotton Gin Inn. There was a lot of green algae in there, and I hadn't seen that in a long time, and I wondered if there is an obstruction there that's causing the water to stay backed up, and if that is the case, you know, the water that's trying to get by your house is getting stuck. So anyway, we need to look at the kind of the culverts downstream,
Right.
and then we'll ask Corey and the engineers to look and see if other solutions can help.
Yeah, because I was wondering, with that bill of water around her house, could that be part of the problem for those apartments? With that high water that they keep up there all the time too, when we get a heavy rain?
The apartments.
Edenton Manor?
I did talk to Corey, he said that they were going to do some maintenance on the ditches there based on what you had mentioned to me. So that may be something, but that won't help, that'll just get more water her way. We really need to find a way to let that water go out downstream, south, yeah.
And then, Bree, what do you think is a realistic time frame for Corey and Public Works to get a report back to us so we can report back to her?
I mean, I would think no more than 30 days by the time they crawl around and look downstream.
Well, Ms. Gallagher, thank you for bringing that to our attention, and I assure you that we will take a look at it and see what can be done to alleviate your problem.
Thank you so much.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there anyone else, Anne Marie, there that?
I don't think so, Mayor. Hang on one second. Excuse me. No other public comments.
Okay, well, that completes our agenda for tonight. I'll need a motion to adjourn.
Second. You told me this would be a short meeting.
Yeah, we all did this.
That's our political.
I don't think anybody told you that. Yeah.
Look better as grass. Appreciate it. Roger and I were talking about it. I'm anxious for the grass to grow down right now. There's a lot of mud. I have to clean it. It's a big